Why Warhammer 40k is kind of a crappy tabletop game. Now, before that becomes too scary of a concept, I'm gonna go ahead and say the lore and everything that comes with it, the books, the designs, that stuff is all wonderful. I'm talking about the actual rules that make up the tabletop game portion of this IP. So Warhammer 40k started off as a tabletop game, and though you can play it as a video game and read it as books, it really is designed to be a tabletop game. So before I totally roast Warhammer 40k, I will say I fucking love Warhammer 40k. I'm not currently playing it. I have sold all my armies. I have sold a total of 20 armies that were over 2,000 points because the game I love building armies. I love the idea. And then once I play it for a little while, I realize the gameplay has some massive, boring elements. So what's good about Warhammer 40k? I really don't like cards. Let's see if I have an example anywhere near me. It doesn't look like I do. Cards are kind of like these extra parts to a game that really make it feel more like a board game. And it'll be like cards with stats or random elements and stuff like that. The reason I don't like that is because it just gives you one more thing to lose. You don't have just the miniatures to look over and maybe a book or two. You have these little tiny cards that could fall or be lost, and that can render a unit useless if you don't have them. 40k doesn't have this problem. It is always decided that you would need to buy a codex. Okay? By that, it means you're going to buy a rule book for $60 to $80. That's going to be the cost for just the rule book. But wait, there's more. You're going to also buy a codex. Each individual army, so say you were playing like gold people, this little gold miniature that I'm painting, and these guys, these gray ones that I have here, you would need a book for each in that case. And each book is going to cost between $45 and $55. I saw yesterday when I went to the game store, I was trying to start a new science fiction game, that I could get one of the starter combat patrols, but I like to start two armies at once. So I could buy two combat patrols. That's about $200. And then I would have to buy the books. And that was another $150 or more because I need the rule book and two codexes. Now, because of that, I think it makes the game rather expensive, as most people know. But it also, if you're trying, I do a lot of single player where I play at home and just open up a couple of codexes and play. There's nowhere to put all these damn books. I need to have a rule book open, a codex open, and and another codex if I'm doing single player. And I gotta say, that is a lot of fucking books to go through to try to figure out what's going on or find stats. It's not ideal. Half that book is just bullshit fluff that they give you that's really fun to read, but it ought to be, rules. And it's like, you really don't want to have to buy these books all the time. Every time you get into a new Warhammer army, you don't get to just buy $100 worth of miniatures. You're spending an additional $50 on a book. And as cool as that is, I've done it now 20 or 30 times, and I gotta say, I don't want to buy these books anymore. It feels like I'm being scammed. People say you can find the rules online. I don't like that. It should just give me the rules. Hell, when I buy a box of miniatures, the fucking rules for everything in that box should be present. Sometimes it is on a piece of paper that's very unclear. So it's just not a good system. So basically what I'm saying is the codex system has been flawed. They released codexes, these books, and then they released free rules at another time. So it was kind of fucking people who had bought these codexes and invested the way they were supposed to. So that's disappointing. Here's the thing. We're talking about Warhammer as a tabletop game. We're not asking how cool is a Space Marine, because that's an obvious answer. They're fucking awesome. We're asking what it makes a good tabletop game, and how would I know that? I've played fucking 50 of them. I used to work at a game store, and that kind of got my head more wrapped into it. But the honest truth is I probably go through 4 or 5 different games a year, and I've been doing this for about 20. Right now my current games are one that I wrote that does historical wargaming. Then I'm playing A Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm playing Firefight by Mantic. So, and I also play Hero Quest at home with some added rules and stuff to make it a little juicier. So those are my current games. The amount of games I've played is pretty much endless. Okay, Star Wars, I've played Armada, I've played X-Wing, I've played Imperial Assault, I've played Star Wars Legion, every single faction within that game. Then there's, historical. I've played Bolt Action, Blood and Glory, Blood and Plunder. Like, it literally, if you name the game, I've played a variation of it. I've played the Mars Attacks miniature game. I've played every version of freaking Zombicide, which is a board game. And it's like, this is kind of something that I have a tendency to do. I'm always looking for the ultimate miniatures game. And I'm going to go ahead and say it ain't fucking Warhammer. If you step one toe outside of Warhammer, you will discover the only thing it's got is cool designs. It doesn't actually have a good war game. For starters, there is no other war game that I've ever seen that basically has 40 dice being rolled at once. This is something that my own war game I made had that same flaw, and I'm going to have to work on it because it sucks. Basically, with Warhammer 40k, you could be firing, let's say, a squad of men who each have 2 shots. Well, it adds up to 40 dice being rolled. So you have like 40 dice in your hand, and you're like, shh, and then you're like slowly picking them out. Some of them can be re-rolled, and it's like 5 minutes to roll one attack. And it's like when I play this Game of Thrones game, what it will do is, here, I'll grab this. For all 12 of these miniatures, I get 8 dice, or 7 dice. As more of them die, a certain amount of dice are reduced. So you go like 8, 5, then 3. Those are the most amount you're going to have to roll. 8, that's nothing. You can hold that in your hand easily. I've rolled in Warhammer where I literally had like this many dice, and it was just a pain in the ass, and the poor person sitting across the other side is so bored. Well, and they shouldn't be. They're being shot with a minigun, and they're like, oh, this is dull. Here's the biggest flaw. Here it is, 7 minutes in. Why Warhammer is not a very good tabletop game. It doesn't have alternating activation. What the fuck? They call themselves the most, we're the most played tabletop game. We rock, we have it. We're selling more than anybody. Then how the fuck have you not figured out that everybody wants to play alternating activation? By that, I mean this. I have 3 squads of these little men. I activate 1 squad. They attack, they do their thing. Now, the enemy activates their squad. And they go. Each person activates a small squad or a unit. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Until everything's activated. The end. That's a turn. What does Warhammer do? Move all of the gold guys and shoot with all of this team. And then that turn is over, and then it goes over to the enemy. That might sound pretty easy. Well, you're moving 20 different squads. Okay, that makes sense, right? No, it doesn't. Because what it causes is one side on the first turn is going to get to attack with 10 different units before the enemy gets to respond to anything. They just have to sit there and watch 40% of their army die before the game even fucking begins. It's retarded. It doesn't make sense. It makes the game crap. Because there is no balance. Whoever goes first has an extreme advantage. There's no nerf that makes the first attack lessened or anything like that. Going first in Warhammer 40k literally means you get to hit with your full army and the enemy never gets to do the same. That is broken. The end. That is broken. It is broken. It is broken. It hasn't worked for 20 years. It's so old school. Every modern miniature war game has ditched this concept. I move my entire army, you move your entire army, is over. Now what we do is we move each squad 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, not 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Can you imagine how fucking boring it is to be the person waiting for somebody to activate 10 or more different units and go through all the rules, all the movement, all the shooting, instead of, I shoot at you, you shoot at me. I shoot at you, you shoot at me. I shoot at you. That's a firefight. What Warhammer is showing is fucking stupid. It's like a role-playing game from Final Fantasy VII, where you're just taking turns attacking each other with no actual urgency to the fight. It feels ridiculous. You will have your tanks blown up before you even get to use them. Tanks you spent $60 on, tanks you assembled, tanks you painted, tanks you love, and they don't even get to be in the game because he went first and shot every fucking cannon he could at all your tanks. So when it's your turn to retaliate, when 2 comes up, you don't have anything to hit back with. All your tanks are gone. So you literally start your fucking fight with 70% of your army and they still have 100. It's bullshit. It is unfair. It makes everything unbalanced. And then to make it even worse, there is no fucking balance in this game at all. And I love asymmetrical combat. I won't play something that isn't asymmetrical. It needs to be. I don't want to have 2 exact same armies going at it. That is boring. That's chess. I don't want chess. I want Covenant and Spartans from Halo. I want Martians versus human beings. I want orcs versus dwarves. It needs to be different or it just feels boring. My bad. Warhammer seems to think that is not something that needs to be balanced. Oh, the Space Marines are very powerful, so they'll be that way in the game. No! If you play as Space Marines, you shouldn't just automatically win. There's a way to balance that. You can make it so Space Marine lists are much smaller. You can make it so, this ability can be counteracted with this. It's just not that way. You will play armies that you totally dominate, and it's not even fun to play against them. Then you will play against another army with the same same army you just won with, and you'll totally fucking lose because you don't have the right army to take them on. You know how many times I've been in a situation where I just straight up have the wrong army? Like I used all Imperial Guard infantry, and I go up against a vehicle-based army. Or Terminators, like an all-Terminator army. I totally get dominated. There's not much I can do. And if I was fighting orcs or Tyranids, Necrons, something like that, I might do well. But because I'm simply against the wrong enemy with the wrong army, I lose. So what is their method? Well, I lost, so I gotta go buy something to make it so I can win again. So you buy some tanks, and you add some tanks to your list, and then you beat that Terminator list, and you're like, woohoo, I spent $300, now I beat that on one army. And the next army you go up against is demons that fight in close combat, and suddenly your tank list sucks, and you gotta go buy something again. Every fucking time you play Warhammer, you will walk away being like, if I only had this, if I could just buy that. And it's like, it gets fucking old. You're like, it becomes this escalation of force where they buy a tank, you buy a tank. They buy a monstrous creature, you buy an artillery shell or a nuclear bomb that can blow it up. And it's like, it sounds kind of cool when I describe it that way. I'll even admit that. But as you play it, it just becomes bloat. You're just buying anything you can to stay in the game because if not, you will lose. And so you don't have the opportunity to just use that 2,000 point list army that you spent $1,000 on. You got to keep buying shit you don't want just to stay in the fight. And that is just so flawed. So it's got no balance and it has no alternating activations. This is bullshit. Horus Heresy flirted with this idea. They made it so you could react to the enemy's thing. The enemy moves towards you, you could move away. The enemy shoots at you, you could shoot back. But those idiots actually had it so that the enemy that reacts would cut you off and shoot before you do. I'm the one, it's my turn and I'm shooting, and it was so fucky. And it's like, they just don't know what they're doing when it comes to writing a modern war game. They're really good at writing what worked in the 90s and early 2000s. I'd say even all the way up to like 2010. But when I jumped back in 2013, oh my God, it was so bad. The rulebook was like this thick. It wasn't fun. The game was so bloated. It took forever to accomplish anything. And yet you still felt like you were playing it wrong. It was so hard to jump in and play. So then in 8th edition, they streamlined everything. That was a smart move. But they, for some reason, kept the frame, which was still old and crappy. It still would not accept that alternating activation is the way of the future. That is the way war games are played now. We do not play them where you play for an hour, then I play for an hour. We play together now. We get that. But Warhammer doesn't want to get that. They're like, it's fine. We put it in Kill Team. We put it in Warcry. Quit your bitching. Those are skirmish games. You literally have 10 fucking models. Like, do you not realize that in Warhammer you usually have 10 fucking units? A unit in a single model can be used in the same way. Activate one unit, they activate one unit. Activate one unit, they activate one unit. It's super simple, and yet they won't figure that out. I'm sick and fucking tired of sitting there for an entire fucking hour waiting for my turn. Jesus, you could walk away. You could literally walk away from the game for an hour and just have them roll your defense rolls, and you wouldn't have to do shit. And the defense rolls, it's not like you can do anything to make them better. You're just rolling dice to represent that you've been shot at. You can't make that, you can't change that. It doesn't matter who rolls it. It's fucking pointless. And it's like, they don't have a good system. They have a shit game system. The bolter, the famous, wonderful weapon that is the bolter, feels like crap in most editions of the game. I haven't messed with it too much in 10th, but I will tell you, in 9th, it just felt like an airsoft gun or a BB gun. It never had the firepower, and Orc's fucking, his toughness was 5, but the strength of a bolter was 4, which means you had to roll a fucking 5+ to hurt a goddamn Orc. Like, are you kidding me? The bolter is ineffective against an unarmored Orc. What the fuck is it good against? Imperial Guardsmen. How often are you fighting Imperial Guardsmen with bolters? It's really not that much of a thing. And it's like, that sucked. Like, the bolter is supposed to be this fucking 50 cal feeling gun that just blows things apart. You know, you expect a -1 on it, extra range, all kinds of shit like that. There's variants that have some of that, but it really doesn't make the difference that you'd hope for. The bolter kind of sucks. And I was like, if they can't get the signature weapon of their fucking series right, what can they get right? The las gun, because of a rule that basically was like hardened soldier, I don't remember what it was. It made it so on a 6+, you would hit the enemy and they would die. It would give them a mortal wound. So you roll 60 freaking guardsman shots, and let's say 10 of them are 6s. You'd put 6 fucking mortal wounds on something. Well, if you used bolters with the same amount of points, same amount of space marines, you wouldn't do that much damage. You literally couldn't put out mortal wounds with a gun that shoots soda can sized bullets that explode on impact, but you can with the gun that's called the Emperor's Flashlight. The gun that is jokingly basically called a useless piece of shit was more effective than the bolt gun. They write the fucking lore. They write how powerful these things are, and they still can't get it the fuck right. You can't be this dumb, and yet they are. Warhammer is a welcome to wargaming situation. Here's what I say. It's not a welcome to wargaming. They try to fuck you out of wargaming. Instead of you ever playing any of the great games that thousands of companies have made, instead, you go with the fucking Walmart brand war game, and that's Warhammer. They're going to charge you double for everything, give you a shitty war game to play, and then basically entice you to never try anything again because you've invested so much money. I know so many people who call themselves wargamers who have never played anything that's not made by Games Workshop. You're not a wargamer, you're a Games Workshop fanboy. There is a difference. You're a fanatic for a company. You are unwilling to wargame. I've played 50 different fucking games, and Warhammer was one of the least quality of them. It has the coolest miniatures. It has some cool artwork. It has some great lore. It had shit gameplay. In pretty much every version of the game, you can cheese the fuck out of it and make it a winning list and play in such a way that it's not fun. You are missing out on so many great systems. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Warhammer is the only popular game that kind of sucks. I think Star Wars Legion blew. I can't believe how much I hate that game. I think it sucks. You can have 6, when I was playing it may have changed by now. When it first came out, you could have a maximum of 6 squads of stormtroopers, which was a total of about 36 miniatures. You called your game Legion, but I can't even have a platoon's worth of stormtroopers. Nope. Well, how do the stormtroopers stack up? They're terrible. You can't use them. Well, why would I use them then? You shouldn't. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean I shouldn't use the it's stormtroopers in a game called Star Wars Legion? No, they're terrible against clones, horrible against rebels, useless against droids. So why have stormtroopers in the game? Don't. Just use death troopers and all the other cool special forces options. But it's a game called Star Wars Legion, which is based off the line where the Emperor says, an entire legion of my best troops. You know, he's talking about the 501st during the Return of the Jedi. And I can't do that? It's totally useless? Yep. If they get in a direct firefight with clones, the clones will lose one guy and you'll lose your entire squad, and they cost the same amount of points. It's so unbalanced. And I get stormtroopers are supposed to suck, but they should have some kind of advantage if you have a whole bunch of them. Or maybe they should have double firepower. They just have to shoot more often. Something. But no, stormtroopers were useless in that game. ATST walkers. The chicken walker that everybody loves. This is the worst vehicle I've ever used in a tabletop game. It would shoot at one fucking rebel squad and nothing would happen. And I had two of them. I bought two of these tall-ass cool miniatures, and they'd both target the same rebel squad, same firepower. Nothing would happen. Maybe one model would die. That is not what you picture from a devastating war machine that takes up half your fucking list. Terrible game. And it has a great license and lore, of course, and miniatures. All of it is good except for the actual fucking game. And that game required all kinds of fucking cards, all kinds of fucking dumb, movement time. Like, they had its own movement sticks instead of just using a goddamn tape measure. It had so many dumb little rules. It really wasn't an impressive game. So I'm not just saying Warhammer sucked. I played a lot that I would say never again. War Machine and Hordes. I loved it while I played it. When I got out of it, I still to this day, I'm like, never again am I going to play War Machine and Hordes. It's chess. It just didn't have any other game mode than chess. And I just thought that was dull as hell. So there are war games that suck. There are war games that are not very fun. Warhammer is the coolest of those crappy war games. It is for people who do not know what a good war game is supposed to feel like. It is for people who are jumping into wargaming to think that the only option they should choose is the one that everybody plays. Granted, it is really easy to find a game of somebody to play 40k with. But if you play 40k more than 5 times, then you will play with the biggest fuck faces that ever existed. People that cheat, people that cheese the rules, people who build lists that are unfair, people who will literally, they've already read your codex and will know more about your rules than you and take advantage of you and screw you over to basically give themselves a full victory. Nobody plays Warhammer 40k with the intentions of losing. And so there can be extreme douchery when it comes to picking an opponent. I have had many opponents cheese that game. Same for Star Wars Legion. We had a guy who found out that if he didn't paint his miniatures and then made a big blob where you couldn't tell which unit was which, the blob was nigh unbeatable and you basically couldn't choose where you were targeting things. He used this blob method so effectively that nobody could go against him at all, and it just broke the game. That's something that happens. I don't blame games for people who cheese. I will say this. I do blame games who give too many options to people like that. And Warhammer is one of them. It is a game where you will find somebody who lives with their parents and has no respect for other people and just wants to win, will pick an army that perfectly represents that fact. They'll be like, I play Custodes because each one of my miniatures is worth like 10 of yours. And they get real upset if you kill any of their little gold gods. Like, because they're, hey, I'm supposed to win. It's in my headcanon, my army always wins and takes no casualties. And it's like, well, we're playing a tabletop game. That's all that happens is you lose a little bit and lose some men. And to be honest, I don't win that often. When I build lists to win, I win, and I hate that. I don't want to win. I want a good game. There is a difference. If I win, so what? But if I get a good game where we're just going back and forth, it comes down to one miniature versus one miniature. He's rolling, I'm rolling. Oh my God. Like, that's what I play for. I had that happen when I was 11 or 12. And ever since I've been like, that is the game that you want. Where it comes down to the last turn. It comes down to one miniature versus one miniature. It's the way the game's supposed to feel. Do I suggest Warhammer 40k? No, I don't. It's really expensive. It's really dumb. It literally will expect you every 2 to 3 years to buy another rulebook and all of those little codex rulebooks you bought earlier. Remember the $50 books? Well, guess what? In 3 years, it's a useless fucking magazine. That's what it becomes. It's just a magazine for you to look at stuff. They make it so everything they put out every 3 years, totally useless. So say you have 6 armies like I did, that would mean every 3 years you got to buy $300 worth of codexes and a new rulebook. So every 3 years you got to spend $380 on books and rules you already have. This is bullshit. It's not right. It is just taking advantage of people who don't know better and haven't played other systems. So, what systems do I suggest? What have I played? First, let's start with historical. Blood and Plunder, Blood and Valor, and Bolt Action are all wonderful historical options that I would recommend to anybody. A game by Games Workshop that I totally suggest and always will, Middle Earth Strategy Battle Game. It is the Lord of the Rings Warhammer, and it is so wonderful. You need one book. It has all the rules for everybody, and you can just mix those armies up and have a great time. I would suggest that game. I give it a straight up 10 out of 10. Games Workshop's best work. Age of Sigmar is okay. I would probably put it exactly where I would put Warhammer 40k. They are okay systems. They're just overpriced, ridiculously dumb when it comes to the rules, and straight up unfair most of the time. So, other ones I suggest, this Game of Thrones Song of Ice and Fire. I have not fully played it yet. I've only really been demoing it with what I have, but for what I see, it's really clean, it's really balanced, and it's really fun to play, so it might be something worth trying. Star Wars X-Wing. I didn't play the second edition. I lost interest by that point. But Star Wars X-Wing was a really great place to start. It comes with painted miniatures. It really doesn't take long to build a little army. And it's just a good, just good jumping off point if you're thinking about getting involved. Kings of War, I have nothing negative to say about my Kings of War experience. That game was great. I had a good opponent. I had good armies. I could build an army in a week or two and then jump into the game. I loved it. I thought it was great. I had dwarves. I had goblins. And I think it was ogres were my 3 armies. And I really, really can't suggest Mantic Games. They're doing really well. That Firefight game, I just picked it up. I'm very impressed by how well that game is looking. It looks like something that people would actually play and enjoy with all kinds of deep rules and cool ideas, and you only need to buy one rulebook. You don't have to buy all the codexes or decks of dice or decks of cards, anything like that. It comes with everything you need. It even comes with the dice that you're going to need. So, nice, simple game. There are other opportunities in the comments. I would love for you guys to say what other war games you've tried out other than Warhammer, or tell me why you think Warhammer sucks or why it doesn't. So, these are my opinions. I do stand by that Warhammer 40k is a shit rule set. I've written my own rule set. It's not perfect. It might even be worse than Warhammer 40k because I don't know what I'm doing. But I will say this. It was more fun in the sense that it was just something you could jump right into. And it cost a total of pretty much $5 to play the game. You need green and tan army men and the rule set, which is free. So that was something that I realized I shouldn't have this much fun with something that's $5 when Warhammer has cost me $5,000. So maybe that's why they call it Warhammer 40,000, is because it costs you $40,000 to enjoy the game. I'm not into that. I'm over it. So, what war games do you enjoy? Which ones do you prefer over Warhammer? And what reasons do you have for sticking with Warhammer? What is it that you like so much about it? For me, it's the lore and the miniatures. It always keeps me coming back. I know I'll be back to it eventually, despite how shitty the rule set is. I just want to play as Space Marines sometimes, and no other game has that. So that is what it has, is that those miniatures and that world that it gives you is just wonderful, and it's hard to stay away from it. So, Warhammer 40k, does it suck? Is it awesome? Let's find out in the comments.